You didn't.
Yep.
I thought you learned your lesson.
I guess not.
Dad, the vultures are back.
Okay, kids, you know the drill. Windows up.
Gone too far looking for a good deal on gas? Try Price Match, only from BP Me Rewards at participating BP and Amoco stations. Learn more at bp.com/bestprice.
Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, coming to you from Hoover, Alabama. The ball game with Ole Miss and Auburn just went final. That wraps up the full day of the first day of SEC tournament play. So we'll talk about that, kind of preview Mississippi State's opponent. A lot of things to talk about. Even though the Bulldogs didn't do much today, there was one big announcement. Mississippi State will start Brandon Smith against Florida on Wednesday. I really like the move. I was a little bit curious about which direction we would go, and you almost think you'd like to use the SEC tournament to perhaps solidify a decision as far as your third starter. Because here's the thing, I don't think a lot of people have forgotten, we got to win at least 3 games at a regional. It's not as simple as, we've got a couple of good starters. The regional is probably more trouble for us than the super. Because you lose that winner's bracket game and you're in the loser's bracket, you're going to stretch your pitching staff really, really thin. And we have struggled to get quality starts. So perhaps this is an opportunity for Brandon Smith to become that third starter. It's one of those things you begin to think about, too, as we look forward to next weekend. I don't think you throw Christian McLeod or Will Bednar in game 1. If you're playing against a 4, maybe you could throw Brandon Smith as a starter, as a right-hander. And then maybe you pair him up with Houston Harding in game 1, bring McLeod in game 2, and then Bednar in game 3 to kind of close out a regional. Because you're just not going to pitch it like a normal weekend. Maybe your best matchup is to throw your number 3 in game 1. As we threw Paul Mahalam here several years ago in game 1, and it ended up basically cost us the regional. So you don't want to waste a big arm against a 4, even though everybody's got an ace. And so we're going to see some guys that come out there and that could probably make things a little interesting for us. But, depending on how Lamonis wants to handle it, I could conceivably see a guy like Brandon Smith getting the first start in the regional next weekend. And so you throw him on Wednesday, and depending on how long he goes, maybe that eats him up for the weekend, but then all of a sudden he's ready to go next Friday. You give him extra rest there. And so I like the move. I also like the matchup because, Florida is a bit of a launch angle team. Hoover is a big ballpark. We have seen a few balls leave the yard today. But, Brandon's probably the guy on the staff that gets the most sink out of his pitches. And so he is a ground ball machine when he is on his game, and I think that he's the guy that can get Florida to kind of get themselves out. It's also a good opportunity for State to play a team that's going to be in the NCAA tournament field and potentially a host site. And so it's an RPI building opportunity for us. This is a team, I guess, right around 24-25. I haven't checked Warren Nolan tonight. Of course, there'll be some adjustments with all the activity today. But, again, beating Florida would do more than beating Kentucky. Now, I believe Mississippi State, I'd hate to say that we're a lock for a top 8 national seed, and I know you want to hear me say that. I've heard some other people say that. I just feel like State needs to win a game, certainly 2 games, where I think would lock it up without question. I think we've done what we need to do, but I like to kind of remove all doubt. And so if you win that ball game to Florida, I think everybody can rest easy and say, you know what, no matter what happens the rest of the weekend, we're good. Since we've been together, there's been some other baseball news. Mississippi State, Tanner Allen, named the SEC Player of the Year. Now, there was some discussion about that here in the last 10 days, and I began to kind of think, well, man, is it really possible? And then when you look at his numbers and look how evenly balanced his year has been and how he is, among the top 10, I think, in 8 or 9 categories, it's ridiculous to think about. But he is your SEC Player of the Year. Mississippi State also gets him on the first-team All-SEC list, which you certainly would hope that the Player of the Year is on that list. And according to the release from Mississippi State, that's 8 of 9 years we've had a first-team All-SEC guy. That's who we should be, right? Second-team guys, Rowdy Jordan, Landon Sims. And people say, I don't understand how Landon Sims didn't make first. Well, here's the deal. It's not a reflection on him or his numbers. It's just kind of the way we do things in the SEC. What is it, 2 starters and 1 reliever? Other leagues will have 4 or 5. I mean, you couldn't even make it through a weekend with the way the SEC does it. And so I'm not the least bit surprised that Landon made second team, and I'm okay with that. Absolutely okay with that, even though I do think that you could certainly make a good argument. But listen, Cops from Arkansas has been outstanding. I mean, there's no way you can really argue against it, to be honest with you. It's not to say he's better, but he's been used a lot more regularly. And his numbers, as far as innings pitched, is much higher than what we've seen from Sims. So, and you may hear a little background noise. I'm here in the hotel in Hoover, and so this little air conditioner that's next to me is a little bit noisy at times. Also, the SEC newcomer team had 3 Bulldogs on the list. And that's Landon Sims, Will Bednar, and Logan Tanner. So 6 Bulldogs honored for their work this year, not unexpected. And you begin to ask yourself, okay, well, who didn't make the list off our team that should have? I think everybody that needed to make the list made the list. I think anything beyond what we got is probably asking a little bit too much. And so congratulations to those guys and their families. Very well-deserved honors, and sometimes I think, sometimes some guys make these lists by reputation. That's not the case with Tanner Allen. He is having, without a doubt, the best year of his career. It is absolutely ridiculous. And let me read you some of these numbers here from the MSU release. Tanner Allen's been at his best against the best in college baseball. Led the SEC in overall batting average at .387. The only SEC hitter to finish with an average over 400 in SEC play at .411. 25 multi-hit games, 17 multi-RBI games, reached base multiple times in 36 of 52 games played. The only SEC student-athlete to rank among the top 10 in average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, run scores, to RBIs, total bases, and hits. It's ridiculous. It's one of those things you kind of begin to look at this thing and say, okay, well, has TA become the guy we always expected him to be? To be honest with you, I think he has exceeded those expectations. I think his feelings were hurt last year because he wasn't drafted. It was a 5-round draft. And to be fair, the fact that he was dealing with that injury, in hindsight, he wasn't going to be drafted. We all kind of held our breath and crossed our fingers, but as we have learned more about that injury, he injured his wrist out there against Long Beach State. There was no way. He was beat up all year last year. Remember, he fouled that ball off his foot, and it was an injury-plagued year. So he comes back by his own admission with a chip on his shoulder, and he has really led this team. Now, as Chris Simona says, he's not the nicest guy in the dugout. He really pushes his teammates to be good and to be better. And that's what you want a leader to do. Sometimes the biggest leader is not necessarily the most popular guy in the dugout. You need some people who are going to hold you accountable. And that's what TA does. He's not a jerk by any stretch of imagination, but he is a guy that leads by example. But he also is a very vocal leader. If we're not doing right, not acting right, he's the first guy to speak up. And as many people have told you, throughout your life, isn't it great when your best player is also your hardest worker? That's really the case with Tanner Allen. So very well-deserved honor, very, very happy for he and his family. And I'll be honest with you, had he not gotten it, I would not have been disappointed, I guess you could say. I mean, his numbers certainly are worthy of it. But, there's a few other guys like Judd Fabian. If they had gotten it, I'd been kind of hard to argue against that. If somebody had said, well, maybe Kumar Rocker. I get it. But TA really, to win that honor in a year where the league is as loaded as it is, really speaks volumes about him and about the season that he's having. So rejoice, Bulldog fans. That's where we are today. I want to thank our good friends at Bulldog Burger Company for all they do to allow me to bring you the latest, greatest, and coolest information about the Mississippi State Bulldogs, the premier college athletics program in the country. No, I'm probably being a little bit far-fetched there. Certainly in the state of Mississippi, right? But in our hearts, number one in the country. Go celebrate Tanner Allen's success in Mississippi State's top 8 national seed by going to Bulldog Burger Company. Go by, check them out today. And listen, if you're looking for summer employment or perhaps something more permanent, they can help you. They're looking to hire at all 3 locations. Of course, you know about the one on University Drive in Start Vegas and on Gloucester Street in Tupelo. Currently staffing, getting ready to train a new staff to open the new location there at Lake Harbor Drive in Ridgeland. Go by, check them out today. And if you're not looking for work, you still want to go grab a good meal. The portions are tremendous. The quality is great. The taste is great. The service is great. Price very affordable. Go find your own favorites. Have the spring rolls. They'll make you better looking. We all need more of that. Some of us should probably eat them daily. And maybe you should. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. So let's run down the day that was in Hoover, Alabama. I tell you, I got up and got on the road before noon today. It's one of those things, you can never get away soon enough, right? I was just thinking, okay, I've been gone so much, maybe I'll spend the night and get up early Wednesday morning. And I started having these nightmares thinking, well, what if there's like an accident on the interstate, in between Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, and let's say I'm late for the game or I missed the game. I didn't want that anxiety in my life, so I came on Tuesday. Was going to go make it out to a couple of games today. I didn't go today. My schedule was pretty regimented. I was going to make it in time before checkout, and then I was going to interview Rowdy Jordan around 3, and then Rowdy got pushed back and pushed back again, so we finally connected around 5 o'clock. And then I got to thinking, well, I need to get this article up, because if I don't get it up now, when are people going to read it? Because the game's going to be played at 9:30 in the morning, and then the Ole Miss Auburn game was coming on, and so I decided to take care of that. Went and had some pizza at the local place. Came back, watched the game online, and now I'm here with you guys. But it was a very, very eventful day out at the Hoover Met. So let's kind of run down that action. Of course, the first game of the day is one of interest for Mississippi State fans, as the University of Kentucky and Florida went head-to-head. I suspect Nick Mingione, those guys are kicking themselves tonight. They absolutely had several opportunities. Listening to the game in, you're thinking, okay, we got runners at second and third, nobody out. They get nothing from it. And then Florida, of course, puts together a couple runs there. It's just incredible to begin to see how this thing worked. Kentucky actually out-hit Florida 11-5. 11-5, Florida booted the ball around, and Kentucky did as well. So it wasn't a clean game for either team, but you get 11 hits and you only get 1 run. I mean, it's just one of those things you look at and you scratch your head about. It makes no sense whatsoever. But Florida gets 2 in the first, and then it just seemed like every inning after that, it seemed like Kentucky was just so close to kind of climbing back in the ball game. Well, they finally do in the 5th. So it's a 2-1 ball game, and Florida does what good teams do. They responded, and they put up 2 themselves to make it a 4-1 game. And then the rest of it was just zeros the whole way through. Now, one of the things I think is interesting when you begin to kind of run through this, this Florida thing, they had to use 2 of their best pitchers today. Tommy Mace goes 5 innings on short rest, 7 hits, 1 run, 8 Ks, and then 1 walk. They bring in Leftwich late to get the save, and he goes, 1 in the 3rd innings, gives up a couple of hits, gets a couple of Ks, only faces 6 hitters. So I'm sure he would be available for probably an inning tomorrow. But you just never know how effective guys are going to be, especially throwers like that. They have to come back on back-to-back days. So not a great offensive showing by Kentucky, but they're very, very efficient in their work here. Looking at the numbers here, leadoff hitter Young 2 for 4 in the ball game, and then Acton, the second baseman, also 2 for 4. The only 2 multi-hit guys in the lineup. And remember, they only had 5 hits. So you had 6 starters go hitless today, including Judd Fabian, 0 for 5 with a K. Not a lot of swing and miss in the Florida lineup. They're a team that's going to put it in play, which I think kind of plays into the hands of Brandon Smith a little bit. And Kentucky did a pretty good job defensively. Like I said, they did have a couple of errors, but it's just I just go back to this whole thing about 11 hits and just a 1 run, and you even had mixed in a couple of walks there, and then you had some guys out there like DH goes 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. I mean, it's just Kentucky simply wasn't opportunistic, and Florida took advantage. If Mississippi State has the same opportunities, if Mississippi State goes out there and gets Florida, holds them to 4 or 5 hits in the ball game, you got to like Mississippi State's chances. It's a very talented Florida team, but some people have begun to wonder, if maybe perhaps Florida's pitching's not as good as it has been. And, it's still very good. You still got some guys that are going to be drafted very, very early. But I like the fact that 2 of those guys have already pitched. And we'll get to the starter for tomorrow a little bit later in the show. But, you go through this thing and you begin to look and think, Florida over and over and over again. I'm trying to find the box score here. But the left on base was absolutely horrendous for Kentucky. It looks like I'd go back here and find it, I guess. But I don't know how much it really matters. The bottom line is Kentucky let Florida off the hook, and Florida's too good a team. When you get them on the ropes, you got to get the big hit. And we struggle with that at times this year too. We got to be opportunistic tomorrow. There's no doubt about it. Because, I believe we win the ball game tomorrow. I think all the worrying about a national seed is over. All right, let's go back here. Game 2, Alabama jumped all over South Carolina. I mean, absolutely jumped on them. And honestly, I think this makes us look a little bit better. The fact that we just got back from sweeping Alabama at their place, and then they come in here and beat a team like South Carolina, who was in the pool of 20 as a potential host. And you heard me guys talking about it earlier. South Carolina is a team that, on paper against Florida, South Carolina actually looks better on paper. Well, then South Carolina loses today and Florida wins. Now, all of a sudden, you kind of go back to the drawing board and start thinking, okay, well, what if now that Florida has advanced beyond the single elimination phase, they're going to have a couple more ball games at a minimum to play. Perhaps they could play their way into a host. And I know some people were probably projecting that. We'll kind of see how things break out. But Alabama, of course, still playing to get into the tournament, had an incredibly devastating weekend last weekend, getting beat all 3 games. But they come in here today and they beat a team that is going to be in the tournament. And Alabama's RPI is still very respectable, still around mid-20s. And again, I hadn't looked at Warren Nolan. Maybe we will before the show's over. But, this ball game in the third, they jump on them 6 runs in the third. Carolina responds, and then Alabama goes back and puts up, I guess it was 8-0 before Carolina put any runs up. And at that point, you're thinking, SEC pitching, especially, in the SEC tournament this early in the week, it's very difficult to come back from those kind of deficits, and that was the case for South Carolina. Tyler Ross gets a win for Alabama. State got to him a little bit last weekend. He goes 6 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, 4 Ks, give up a couple of dingers, though. And then they bring in Guffey, who pitches a 3-inning save. So Alabama pitching still in pretty good shape. They don't have elite pitching, but they only use 2 guys, and they probably need to win 3 games. Probably need to win 3 to have a realistic chance to get in. And so South Carolina now will sit at home and wait. They know they're in the tournament. They don't know if they're hosting. But I think everybody realizes that those guys will be in a regional somewhere. Maybe in Columbia, maybe somewhere else. Maybe in Charlotte, who knows? Maybe they end up being a 1 seed in Charlotte. One of the bigger stories of the day, LSU Tigers are done. LSU's had a lot of success in Hoover over the years, and for some reason, the voodoo magic has kind of left them this year. They had the rally possum, and they always have all the little things that always seem to happen, and you think, this team is just, powered by voodoo. But it just hadn't happened for them this year. And even though they won some down the stretch, they weren't nearly as good as they should have been or we expect them to be. And I think it's pretty safe to say that LSU is going to have a very anxious week. I really felt like this LSU-Georgia game was essentially a play-in game. I thought the winner of this game is in. The loser of this game may not be. I think the loser of this game is in a lot of trouble, and that's the case, for LSU. They lose 4-1, and if I remember correctly, I guess Marceau went the distance for LSU. That is correct. He goes 8 innings, gives up 9 hits and 4 runs, and of course the bloom is off the rose a little bit, but that's still a very talented pitcher. Looking at the numbers here, for Georgia, they're not great, but goodness, 4 runs on 9 hits, and then LSU gets 1 on 7. Clearly, Georgia executed some pitches when they had to. Wagner, it's kind of a Johnny Holstaff day. Goes 3 1/3. They bring in Woods. He gets the win. Goes 3 2/3, and then they Harris and go and finish it up. So they throw 4 guys, and all of those guys, based on a number of pitches thrown, should be able to come back at some point in the weekend if Georgia continues to advance. But if you're LSU, there's nothing to feel good about right now. It is in the hands of somebody else, absolutely somebody else. And you begin to look at, LSU has a very young nucleus of talent. So I think if Paul Mainieri retires, as many people have suggested that he will, there's a group of guys here I think that are ready to win. Trey Morgan and Dugas and Dylan Cruz. Those guys are studs. There's a lot to work with here at LSU. I don't know what the arms look like for next year. But this is a team I think next year should be better. Isn't it weird to think that LSU may not be in the tournament? It's crazy to think about that. I think we all expected them to take a step back this year because of all the things they lost. I don't think any of us truly expected LSU to be sweating out a selection into the NCAA tournament hoping to be a 3. And I've read all week some people think, they're definitely in. This is a huge loss for them. Huge, huge loss. Now, granted, there's a lot more at-large berths this year, and then there are several conferences that aren't going to play a conference tournament, so there's not a lot of, as many bid stealers this year because the regular season champion is awarded the automatic bid, and so you don't run the risk of somebody winning the regular season title and then being upset in the tournament, and then all of a sudden, a traditionally 1-bid league becomes a 2-bid league. So a lot less of that's going to happen this year, and the committee's got a lot of those at-large berths to work with. Does LSU get one? Man, if I had to call it today, I'd say probably not. In the nightcap, Ole Miss overcomes a late charge from Auburn. Auburn jumped up early, second pitch of the ball game. Ryan Bliss hits a home run, and then Ole Miss responds and really puts some nice swings together. And listen, Owen's a guy has been such a competitor for Auburn, but he just hadn't been right all year. He hurt his thumb earlier in the year in a fall scrimmage, inter-squad scrimmage, and just, it's taken him forever to get going, and they throw him out there. He's their most competitive guy, and, it just didn't work out. But, Ole Miss ties it in the first and puts up 4 runs in the third, and it really felt like the game was over. Auburn rallies and puts a run up in the 5th, and all of a sudden you think, okay, we've got a ball game again. In the 7th, Auburn puts up 2 more runs, makes it a 5-4 ball game. But you flash back to the 5th. Ryan Bliss is up there with 2 men on and 2 outs, and Nikhazy strikes him out. And that really think that was kind of a turning point in the ball game. Really made you feel like Ole Miss was going to win. And of course, it was 5-4 in the 7th. Ole Miss does what good teams do. They give up 2, they put up 2. Next thing you know, it's a 7-4 ball game, and I really think that the air went out of the Auburn sail at that point. Nikhazy just short of 100 pitches. Clearly, he's done for the weekend. And now you've got, basically 10 days to rest him. He won't have to throw again until the regional. And I can't imagine they throw him in game 1 of the regional, probably save him for game 2. So while it was a calculated risk throwing him tonight, he was very, very good. He is, without a doubt, their best player, and certainly their best pitcher. And so Ole Miss advances. And again, I don't think Ole Miss has anything to lose or to gain this weekend at Hoover. I think they are locked in as a host. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think they're going to play their way into a National 8. I just don't see that happening. But listen, Mike Bianco's done a good job over the years kind of managing this tournament. And so we'll see what happens. I just don't think they have the pitching. But, offensively, they're a team that can really get out there and rake a little bit. So we'll see how things progress. But Hoover, at its core over the years, has been a pitcher's park because there's a lot more room out there, for the outfielders, and you got a bigger park. But, we'll kind of see how things progress. But, those are your winners tonight. Eliminated from the tournament, Kentucky, South Carolina, LSU, Auburn. Just 8 teams remain. We'll get our chance there in the morning. So let's take a quick look at the bracket, how tomorrow's games look, and I'll give you a quick little preview on that. We'll kind of move forward to the top 10 list. Of course, the only game that matters, the first one, Mississippi State and Florida at 9:30 a.m. Excited to say the least. Game number 2 will be, I guess 35 minutes after hours, Alabama versus Tennessee. Alabama needs this in the worst way. Again, Tennessee, I think Tennessee has nothing to gain or lose. It's probably just kind of working some guys, getting them some innings. Tony Vitello is a competitor. I know he's going to want to go out there and try to win this thing. He'll legitimize his team, maybe move up a spot in the National 8. They're locked in as an 8. They're locked in as a host. Alabama needs this in the worst way possible, to say the least. The early afternoon game, or I guess the matinee game, will be Arkansas and Georgia. You really got to like Arkansas here. But, Georgia's a team, too, that kind of improved their chances. But, a win like this, that they could take a win over Arkansas, I don't think there's any questions Georgia's in at that point. It's the number 1 RPI team in the country. And so Georgia kind of hanging around there, had a bad weekend against Ole Miss. But this is a team, I think, anything can happen on a neutral field. But, you got to like Arkansas here. But, Georgia's going to bring their best. And then Ole Miss and Vanderbilt is the nightcap. Interesting to see who Vanderbilt will pitch. You got to think probably Dustin Diamond for Ole Miss. Or Derek Diamond, is that his name? I guess Dustin Diamond was Screech, right? God rest his soul. Vanderbilt probably throws a younger guy and then probably saves Rocker and Leiter. But I don't know that. I haven't really looked at their notes. But, Vanderbilt loses 2 out of 3 to Ole Miss. This is probably one they're looking forward to. And on the other side of the ledger, I'm sure Ole Miss is thinking, too, hey, we've already beat these guys 2 out of 3. We get this one. It helps us even more. Maybe it gets us, moves us up in the seeding a little bit. Maybe we don't get all the way to a top 8, but maybe it moves us from, a 12 to an 11 or maybe to a 10. So a lot to play for. And again, Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt could, decide to go home right now, and I think they're probably your number 3 national seed regardless of what happens in Hoover. So it'll be interesting to see how Corbin manages the game tomorrow. Let's jump into today's top 10 list, brought to you by the fine folks at johnnypacker.com. If you haven't bought your sunglasses for the summer, look no further. Visit johnnypacker.com today. Do business with Bulldogs. These are Mississippi State folks that are trying to give you some Hollywood style with some golden triangle flair. Every frame in their catalog is named after a Mississippi town. These guys are fiercely proud Mississippians. There are also people that have been impacted by cystic fibrosis. And so John Packer is a guy that has lived with that most of his life and has become a bit of an advocate for other people. He's, I'm trying to fund some research to hopefully improve the quality of life for younger people that come behind me with cystic fibrosis. And so a portion of every purchase donated to CF Foundation. And now, when you pull up the website, let's say your favorite frames are sold out, don't panic. Just shoot them a message, and they will get those things on order for you. They're turning them around pretty quick. What's happened, though, is since those guys have jumped on board with the Boneyard, you guys have been buying glasses, and so the website kind of can't keep up. And so what's happened is like they'll get, let's say we get 5 frames in, and as soon as the frames come in, 6 or 7 orders come in, and all of a sudden it shows they're sold out. And so while their available inventory, like in-house, may be gone, they're able to get it from their vendors within a couple days. So it's not like you're going to order and have to wait for a month. So if you see it sold out, don't panic. Use the Contact Us link and say, hey, Brandon and JCP, I want to get the Greenwood frames, and they'll get them for you. That's what happened to me. We wanted the Greenwood frames. They showed they were sold out. So don't worry, we can get them. And we had them, I think, in 2 days. So check it out today, johnnypacker.com, and use promo code Boneyard to get 10% off your order. You heard that right, 10% off just by being a Boneyard listener. So when you guys send me a suggestion for the top 10 list, almost immediately I send it to Roy. I say, Roy, here we've got a request for this, we've got a request for that. Matter of fact, I just sent him one recently. We've got a request for Queensryche, and we're going to do that one soon. But sometimes, like, I'll send these things in, and then I forget about them. And then Roy will have them, like, on the list of our to-do list. And then something else will pop up, or I'll hear a song on the radio and say, hey, we hadn't done this. Like, we hadn't done corn yet. And we're going to do corn, too. There's a lot of things we hadn't done yet. It's like we get to a stopping point sometimes, and you guys will send a great idea, and it's like, hey, what's happening. I got a good idea the other day. Somebody said, hey, Steve, what about top 10 songs that you have to play air guitar or air drums to, even if other people are watching? I like the idea. We're going to work that in too. But every so often I get one, and somebody will send one that, maybe of an iconic artist that maybe I'm not a huge fan of. And we've had a couple people request Diana Ross, had 3 people request Whitney Houston. And so I would send these names to Roy, and he's like, hey, you've already sent me that one. So I let Roy pick the schedule this week. Roy Samonte, a good friend of mine, Roy volunteered to begin to put the top 10 list on Spotify. If you're looking for previous top 10 lists, look on Spotify, search for Dogmatic 67. That's DAWGMATIC 67, Dogmatic 67. And you can find all our lists there. You can like them, you can share them, whatever. And what's incredible is I see all these impressions and see all you guys are looking at the list and then you're going over and maybe subscribe to Roy. It's a good thing too. So you can keep these things and they'll just show up on your playlist. But so we're doing Whitney Houston today. You're thinking, Steve, really? Yeah, we're doing Whitney Houston today. I watched that documentary about her life on Netflix. You forget. When you live through it, especially when, I'll be honest, I'll make a confession to you guys. I learned a much greater respect for Whitney Houston after I was in my 20s and 30s, because I hated the fact in the 80s. Oh my gosh, I hated that we were so inundated with all this pop music. It's like you call up, the radio station is like, hey, listen, we want to hear Skid Row, we want to hear, Iron Maiden. They're like, you're calling the wrong place, man. We're fixing to play New Kids on the Block. And I remember there used to be a radio station on the coast that used to transmit up into South Mississippi. It was called Power 108, 107.9 on the FM dial. And I used to get so tickled, they would say, your Power Pack. And they'd have that little beefy voice and say, your Power Pack, Debbie Gibson, New Kids on the Block, Whitney Houston. And I'm thinking, man, that's not power. What are you doing? It sounded so hokey and ridiculous. And so I had a little bit of this, bias, I guess, because, I always considered myself a little bit, maybe outside the lines a little bit. And so I rejected a lot of that music on principle. I was a bit of a Tiffany fan, but I was really more of a fan of Tiffany than I was the music, if that kind of makes sense to you. But, but nevertheless, Whitney Houston's an exceptionally talented lady, and God rest her soul. But when I watched that documentary, I guess it was about Clive Davis, and they had a big section, obviously, on there about Whitney Houston. And you forget, man, how many hits that this lady had. I mean, and how remarkable her career was. And she began at such a young age, and she was on American Bandstand. And then all of a sudden, she is like part of American culture, for decades. And then, one thing that got really sad is there were a lot of people, when she began to have some personal problems, there were a lot of people that, kind of made fun of her. And I think that's one of the things that happens in the world. It's like, when you see people that are so ultra talented, and then all of a sudden they're human. They begin to make some human mistakes because we put people on pedestals. And, there's some people that are hoping to knock you off that pedestal, and they can't wait for you to fall so they can say, see, I told you. They weren't everything you told me they were. And I really felt that was the case of Whitney Houston. And there were a lot of cruel jokes made about her weight, and then about her drug problem. And of course, she had some addiction issues. And it's really kind of sad to think that this ultra-talented person who was America's sweetheart for so long, and I'm going to be honest with you guys too, I mean, and this is one of those things I go back and think about, about the progress that we've made as a society. I mean, like, in the late 70s, early 80s, there wasn't a lot of crossover between racial lines when it came to a lot of music. There just was. There was some artists. I mean, there were iconic ones like Elvis Presley and James Brown, Prince to a lesser extent. Prince was just getting going back then. Rick James, Commodores. There was some of that. Of course, there's a lot of stuff from Motown that kind of made its way over, but it was kind of a guilty pleasure for a lot of people because the racial climate in this country was much different. But when Whitney Houston came along, she was so incredibly accepted by people of all races because she was so incredibly talented. It's like you see this young lady singing and you're like, wow. I mean, she just kind of blew you away. And so I think it's cool that we can take a little time and kind of celebrate her and, of course, her life. Very tragic at the end. Very, very sad story. She should still be with us. But again, it's a cautionary tale. I mean, just because somebody has this incredible amount of talent, incredible amount of money and fame, and basically a person that can pick up the phone and get anybody in the world to work with them, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're immune from life's problems. And we all live life on life's terms, and sadly, the check was called in on Whitney Houston far too soon. So let's take a few moments and celebrate the music of Whitney Houston. You probably never thought you'd hear me say those words, but here we go. So here are my top 10. Your top 10 may differ from mine, which would mean automatically on its face your top 10 is wrong. It's incredible how many people think that I really mean that too. So every so often somebody will message me, I know you think I'm wrong. Guys, we're all friends. We all love each other. And I'm okay with you being wrong. But here are my top 10 Whitney Houston songs. Number 10, one that I saw her perform live on an award show with a full orchestra. And I was blown away by how great it was live. It's one of those things, there are so many people that can do it in the studio, especially nowadays with auto-tune. Most of these pop stars today that my girls love are really very average, but they're very marketable from an image standpoint. So they can't sing, so they use computers to sing for them. But I heard Whitney Houston sing this live with this orchestra, and it was at the time I was like, is that really Whitney Houston? I mean, it just kind of blows you away because you feel like you're witnessing this historic moment. But it's the song "I Have Nothing." Number 9, this goes back to the very beginning. This might have been her first big hit. It's been a while since I've listened to Whitney Houston, but it's "You Give Good Love." That was one of her first big hits. "You Give Good Love to Me," baby. Number 8, another one of these Lover's Lament songs, and we all love those, even if we don't want to admit it. And sometimes when we're in our car and we're by ourselves and we're reminiscing, kind of going down memory lane, and we put on some song about heartbreak. This is one for sure, and it's "Didn't We Almost Have It All?" True. Number 7, again, one of the earlier ones, and this is an iconic song. And it seemed like when this song was popular, you couldn't go anywhere without somebody singing it or hearing it on the radio. Like you go to Walmart or whatever, and it seemed like it played 5 times an hour. But it's "Saving All My Love for You." Number 6, something a little more up-tempo later in the catalog. It's "I'm Every Woman." And it's like, I think that's been on every hair care commercial since the dawn of time. They have absolutely commercialized that song. For sure. And listen, a lot of the stuff that Whitney Houston did with Clive Davis, she was a corporate entity. I mean, she was part of the corporate music machine. And good for her, because she was ultra talented. She wasn't one of these people that they had to kind of prop up. She had a lot of people around her that were very talented. But "I'm Every Woman." I mean, it's just like, oh, you want to sell some makeup? Let's use that song. You want to sell some nail products? Let's do that. We got some shampoo to sell. Okay, let's do that. "I'm Every Woman" was everywhere. It got overplayed, but it is a tremendous song. Number 5, again, this one, I think it seemed like this was number 1 for like a year, but it's "Where Do Broken Hearts Go? Do They Find Their Way Home?" And it's a very well-written song, and of course, Whitney didn't write hardly any of her music. I don't know who wrote this one, but the phrasing on this song is incredible. Number 4, and this is when, and Clive Davis talked about this in a documentary, this is when they were trying to give her, more of an adult R&B image and kind of get her out of that, teeny bopper type persona. It's "I'm Your Baby Tonight," and all of a sudden you see the video, and she does look all grown up, and they made her a lot more adult. I think in the beginning they packaged her to kind of be more of a teen type star because of the fact that teens were the ones that bought all the tapes. And yet it was still tapes back then. We didn't get CDs until a little bit later. But everybody bought the tapes, and they came to the shows, and they bought the T-shirts. So they marketed her more to the teeny boppers. And then as she began to grow and those people began to kind of mature too, her music matured right along with her. Number 4, I honestly think this is, obviously I think a lot of this on because it's number 3, but this is one of those ones I think is probably underappreciated in the catalog. And I love the music on this one. I think that the groove on this one It's incredible. But it's My Love Is Your Love. And I don't know where the song came from, but I think her delivery on this is great. Because it's, to me, I think it shows a little bit of her lower register, because we all know her as the one young lady that could hit the big note. But this is one where I thought she kind of grooved a little bit. It was a little more of an R&B flavor to it, and I really love the song. Number 2, and this was on MTV, I think, every 15 minutes. And this, back to them, packaging her as a teen heartthrob type deal. It's I Want to Dance with Somebody, and they even play that sometimes at the ball games at Davis Wade, which I don't think it fits. And listen, it's nothing against the song, but when we're driving down the field or we're trying to make a big defensive stop, I'm not trying to dance with any of y'all. I might want to do the dog pound rock after we score, but I'm not looking to dance with anybody during the football game. I'm just not. Now, maybe you play at basketball games and it's cool, maybe. It just doesn't seem to be like a sports song for me. But listen, I spent a lot of time in high school thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear this. But it's an iconic song. It is an absolute classic song from the 80s, and it's a song that still kind of holds up today. It's like when, I guess it was at baseball a couple of years ago, we played it, and it's like when the song ended, the whole crowd kept singing along. And so maybe it is a sports song, I don't know. But I know that people love that song. But number 1, you probably drum roll, I guess. It's The Greatest Love of All. And I can't remember the last guy that sent me Whitney Houston. He said that this was his number 1. And I don't think there's any question. And what's funny about this song is I think a lot of people think this is about a relationship, and it's not. It's not your wedding song. It's not for your prom. It's not for any of that stuff. The greatest love of all is love for yourself. And it's not arrogance or haughtiness or anything like that or self-centeredness. It's about loving yourself. The greatest love of all is inside of me. It's about me looking after myself and knowing that I'm a person of value, knowing that I'm a person that has dreams and aspirations, and that I am worthy of those things. And so maybe go back and listen to that song in a different light. There are a lot of people that, when I was a kid, everybody used to have, like every couple had a song, you know what I'm saying? What we did, I was like, well, this is our song. And I don't know if y'all still do that today, young people, but we did it. And I was dating, I won't say who the girl is, but, I don't want to embarrass her. She may be embarrassed. I think she was from an almost family. So maybe I should name her, right? But no, I remember, we were much younger, and Cherish from Kool and the Gang was our song. Cherish the love we had. Like at 13 years of age, we knew anything about that. But we all had a song. And I think a lot of people in high school, I remember this, that it was so stupid. It's like all these couples in my high school, they had The Greatest Love of All is their couple song. And I'm thinking, you dodo birds, they're not even singing about a dadgum couple, but, I guess whatever works. But it's just, Cherish the Love We Have is a much better couple song, even to this day. So if one of you want to have a couple song with me, maybe we can pick one out. But it's not going to be The Greatest Love of All. That's your top 10 list for today. If you have suggestions for the top 10 list, because as you know, I'll do anything. I even had somebody reach out and say, Steve, how about a top 10 minute work? I'm like, dude, do they even have 10 songs? I guess if we could do The Land Down Under and Who Can It Be Now 5 times. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's like, what do we do for minute work? Sometimes I think you guys are just trolling me. But if you have a legitimate idea for a top 10 list, reach out and let me know. We'll give it a shot. Roy and I got a pretty good list together. And on Friday, it's going to be a lot different than a Whitney Houston day. On Fridays, I like to do some rock. And so we're going to do some metal on Friday, and I mean metal. And no, it's not Slayer, but it's also not Debbie Gibson. We might do something a little lighthearted on Wednesday, but when it's payday and when it's time for the weekend, we will raise our fist to the gods of rock on this show. So I'm looking forward to that. Roy has been after me to do this band for about 3 months. And we're going to do it, and I'm going to blow Roy's mind. He's going to think there's no way Steve is going to get this list right, and Roy's wrong. Because I, too, am a fan of this band. And everybody that loved metal from the 80s and 90s, even up until the late 2010s, This band's been around for a long time, selling out festivals and venues around the world. Can't wait to do it. Some of you are going to be turned off. That kind of turns me on too, because we're going to raise our goblets and salute metal. Next segment of the show brought to you by the fine folks at Campus Bookmart. Stan and man, Miss Kathy Brown. Stan's probably going to be upset with me because Steve always says he's coming by and he doesn't. So Stan, just let me get through this, man. Let me get through this Hoover trip, and I'm going to come by and see you because I still got stuff I got to buy. I really have enough time. I don't have enough time to eat some days. But anyway, Stan and man, Miss Kathy Brown, lovely, talented Susie. If for no other reason, I got to get by there to see Susie, to see if she's gotten better looking. I'm sure she has. But if you can't get by there and see them, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. They have the latest in Mississippi State fashions. You need to outfit your family before summer vacation. Sometimes mom is thinking, hey, we got this trip coming up. Everybody needs a couple new outfits, Mom. Everybody does. And you can fill that need at campusbookmart.net. And we'll save you a little cash by being a loyal Boneyard listener. The phrase that pays, BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Get your baseball jerseys ready for the regional. Get them ready for Omaha. Get them ready for Super Regional. But if you just need a nice new shirt, let me tell you, your kids want Mississippi State stuff. Your husband wants Mississippi State stuff. And you know what, guys? Your favorite girl, she wants Mississippi State stuff. And even maybe your not favorite girl wants Mississippi State stuff. So get everybody taken care of right there at campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. And again, that gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. All right, let's take a look at the University of Florida baseball team. We didn't play them this year in the regular season. We avoided Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee from the East this year. Of course, this is, again, a golden opportunity we had because we got the bottom end of the East, didn't take full advantage. But it's a chance for us now. We got a chance to play Florida and Tennessee, show how good we are. Florida's good. They're not as good as I think most of us, including myself, expected them to be. They were picked number 1 beginning of the year. The consensus number 1 picked to win the SEC. But they haven't lived up to that potential. They got hot late and kind of played their way into potentially hosting a regional. They still may. Life comes at you fast. But, we win that ball game tomorrow. We certainly help South Carolina a little bit. But, South Carolina's sitting at home hoping to get some help. The days of teams having a bunch of 300 hitters are pretty much over. Florida has 3, though. Florida has 3. They're barely over 300, but they're up there. Jacob Young, of course, hit the big bomb earlier today. He has 4 bombs on the year, hitting 309 on the year. Leadoff hitter for them, 233 at-bats, 72 hits. Got a lot of speed, legged out 3 triples. Second on the team in total bases. So this is a guy that can kind of do it all. 13 to 14 stolen bases, and they don't run the bases a lot, which is kind of unusual. Florida, there's 30 of 46 on the year in stolen bases, and nearly half of them come from Young. Sterling Thompson hitting 305. He is not a full-time starter, but has played a lot for them this year. Another guy that's hitting number 3 bills, man. 50 hits on the year, 8 doubles, 3 triples, 4 dingers, 23 RBI. Nathan Hickey, that's a name you'd be familiar with. It seems like that he is a guy that has got a lot of potential. He's one of these guys that beginning of the year, some people were saying, hey, this kid is going to be, a star, for them. So you might want to go ahead and get familiar with that name. He and Landon Sims, he and Logan Tanner are going to be competing for a lot of honors here in the next several years. 55 games played, started all of them as catcher, as a freshman, and you know how ridiculous that is to have a guy, because even Logan Tanner hadn't started every game for us, because a lot of times, Luke Hancock would start some on Saturdays or some in the midweek. Nathan Hickey started all of them, absolutely all of them. Got 8 bombs, too. This is a guy that's legit, man. 47 RBIs, which leads the team. Freshman. Colby Halter hitting right at 300, 299 for them. Got 3 dingers. Judd Fabian, the real power threat in this order. He is the only guy on the team with double-digit home runs, and it seems like Judd Fabian has been at Florida forever. I am ready for him to go. I like the fact that he went 0 for 5 today. Maybe he's slumping a little bit. Listed as a sophomore out of Trinity Catholic. But this is a guy that can hurt you. A great mistake hitter. He started 54 games this year, did have the one game off, 52 hits on the year, 10 doubles. 52 hits, 10 doubles, and then 20 home runs, 46 RBI. So they've got a little power in the order. Really more of a doubles team, 97 doubles as a team, 67 home runs, and it's kind of spread out. But there are some guys in this order that you can attack. It's not as simple as, all right, we got to go up there and make our best pitch and get guys to chase. I mean, there are guys you can pound the bottom half of the strike zone with that sinker, and they will get themselves out. We're going to have to play good defense because Brandon Smith's going to pitch to contact. There's no question about it. Now, from a pitching standpoint, they've already announced their pitcher. It's going to be another freshman. And it's a left-hander. It's one of those things, too. It's like we hadn't seen a left-hander in a while. We're going to see one, and it's Hunter Barco. 4.04 ERA, 9-2 on the year, 14 starts, 75 innings pitched, just under a hit per inning. 40 runs, 34 of them earned, 25 walks, 92 Ks, so nearly a 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, and has not given up a lot of extra base hits, but he does at times leave some balls up. He has given up a staff high 9 home runs. So you can touch him a little bit, but here's the thing, and this is one of the things you learn as life kind of moves forward. About an average about 242, is that guys that don't walk a lot of people are guys that are around the plate a lot, kind of like we saw with Alabama. Florida is going to be a lot better at kind of throwing some swing and miss stuff because, Kevin O'Sullivan is the pitching coach. This is a guy that I think he still calls every pitch. And so it's going to be a little different than what we saw at Alabama, but they're going to be around the plate enough that we're going to be able to get some, we're going to be able to put some balls in play. As a staff, you begin to kind of work through this thing and just kind of take a look at across the board, 4.25 with a 1.28 whip. That's decent numbers. And it's so to hear Florida people say it, they say, well, it just hadn't been a great year pitching-wise. And I think a lot of it's because there were so much expectations on what people thought that that Mace and Leftwich and those guys are going to be. They end up moving Leftwich to the bullpen. It was that Ole Miss series, if you recall, where they kind of shook things up, where he started the relievers and then had the starters work in relief. It was just it's a different deal. It's been kind of a work in progress all year. But as a staff, that they don't just blow you away, but they're certainly good enough to go out there and put together 6, 7, 8, 9 innings and beat you on any given day. Those are the things you kind of look at and begin to kind of think, okay, this is Florida. You look at numbers and everything else, but you got to remember who's in the dugout. As a staff, 505 strikeouts, 161 walks. That's a lot of punch-outs. It is. They've allowed 55 home runs, too. Batting average against 246. So, I think we can go win the ball game. And I think one of the things that helps us is Brandon Smith starting the ball game, because this is a free swinging team. They are. They want to hit their way on. They're not. You're not going to get up there and work counts and that sort of stuff. Those guys want to rake. That's just kind of in the DNA there at Florida. And you look at them as a team. I think I mentioned this, 277 as a team. Looking at their strikeouts, 471. So 505 punch-outs by the pitching staff, and then 471 from the Florida team. Judd Fabian, 74 Ks on the year. And you're going to get a lot of that with these launch angle type teams that are always swinging for the fence. It's kind of like the old Skip Bertman mentality. It's like, we're going to play for the 3-run homer. And if we don't get it, we may strike out, but we get up there the next inning, we're going to do it. Small ball, just not a real part of the Florida Gators game there. So a lot of swing and miss in this lineup. I think this is also a team, they're top 9. They're going to put the ball in play, and Brandon Smith's going to be around the zone a lot. So we got to go out there and play good defense behind him. I don't think it's going to be some big shootout. I don't. Brandon Smith, when he's on his game, he's very, very difficult to deal with. People forget, a couple of years ago, that was the plan. You remember Brandon was one of our better, his freshman year. Brandon was the guy that we, was kind of a good middle reliever for us, and we're thinking, hey, he's going to be a starter on the weekend. I remember Scott Foxhall had told me, said, hey, he'll either be a closer next year or a starter for us next year, but either way, he is going to pitch valuable innings for us. And then we get in the fall, and I guess it was in that scrimmage game against Louisiana, he tears his UCL, and that's Tommy John. And so the plan all along was just for Brandon to be a guy that was going to be very valuable to the Mississippi State pitching staff. He's rounded back into form, and he just might be the guy. You begin to think about our postseason pitching plans, and we have really struggled to kind of nail down a Sunday guy throughout the year. We tried Sarantola. Of course, we threw Fristo out there some. He had some early success. People began to get some tape on him, and I think in many ways he's kind of hit the wall. We've tinkered a little bit with Houston Harding, who was really great as a starter in the midweek, and then we throw him out there on the weekends, and he had his worst outing of the year. He's just better out of the bullpen. But when you begin to think, okay, when we get into a regional, there's no margin for error. We can't get out there and just, okay, we're going to throw an opener, and maybe he won't give up 2 or 3 runs, and then maybe Harding will be on. Yeah, I think everybody, from Chris Lamonis and Scott Foxhall down to me and you, we'd love to know that we can throw a guy out there on Sunday in Game 3 and probably get us 5 or 6 innings rather than have to sweat out a couple of innings and hope we don't get too far behind. I always expect to score runs in Game 3, but in a regional, it's a different format, right? Everybody in a regional is going to have arms, right? And you never know when you're going to run into some guy having the game of his life. There are always some gamers out there that step up and kind of blow people away. And so if we can settle that this week, win a game or 2, and then settle who the third starter is going to be, it's been a successful week. I'd love to win this thing, but I don't have to win this thing. I guess we won it back in 2012, and I think John Cohen's group and Chris Stratton, it seemed like they pitched in the heart of the day every day for 5 days. And then we were completely exhausted next weekend in the regional. And these guys are college kids. They bounce back. And listen, even in the 9 years since then, we've come a long way in strength and nutrition and recovery and arm care and things like that. I'd love to be able to win this thing. But I don't think we have to win it to feel like that we've had a successful week. And so, again, you win a game or 2. And listen, let's say we win 2 games and then we get beat on Saturday. That's cool. That's fine. Leave here with a winning record, even if we don't have the trophy. Cool. Okay, we'll get on back to start and we'll get ready for a regional. But if we can solidify that third spot in the order, that really sets up well for next year. So I think it is a big day for Brandon Smith against a really good team from the University of Florida. And so he goes out there and gets us in a good situation. Let's hope we go win that ball game. And you kind of nail down any worries about the top 8 national seed, but also, too, you alleviate some anxiety about next weekend. Because that's kind of how I see this thing breaking down for us. It's like, we got to be smart with how we handle the pitching next weekend because, let's say we go out there and throw McLeod and Bednard, all of a sudden we're in a loser's bracket. We got to fight our way back, and the 2 biggest bullets in the gun are gone. And I've been looking at these Hunter Barco numbers while I've been talking. Hunter Barco, the last few weeks, this is a guy that's been hit a little bit. Arkansas got him a couple runs, 4 hits and 2 runs over 6. He goes 6 1/3 against Georgia, 6 hits, 2 runs. Had a good outing against Kentucky, just 2 hits and no runs. But you go down the list here, this is a guy that gives up runs. And he's not a guy that works deep in the ball game. So, we can get to him.
Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.
We just got to make it matter when we do. Let's take a quick look around the country. And there were some other conferences that got their tournaments underway today, and some surprising results. Out of the AAC, Memphis, last place Memphis, 10-run rules East Carolina. East Carolina, some people think, is kind of in contention for that final top 8 national seed and certainly a lock to host. They're already in a loser's bracket. Got absolutely shelled in their game today. And then Central Florida beats Cincinnati, and so Cincinnati will play Eastern Carolina in a loser's bracket game tomorrow. Tulane, a much-needed win for them. Tulane has been projected to be in the field much of the season. Then they have a really bad weekend last weekend and probably need to win 2 to 3 games. I think I read Olthoff was off his game, throwing 87-88. And that's a guy that beat us. Maybe it's fatigue. I don't know. South Florida beats Wichita State. South Florida actually playing pretty well here as of late. No threat for them to get in. The ACC tournament, here's the thing, too. We had this discussion on genespage.com this morning. A lot of people think that Louisville is in the tournament. I don't believe that's the case. I think they can play their way in. They are not a lock for this tournament. RPI beginning of the day was 51, and they had lost, I think, 10 of 14, and had lost their last 2 series and recently swept by Clemson. They get a little measure of revenge today. They take Clemson out in a 15-10, and it's a round-robin deal. They're having a little pool play out there. So Louisville beats Clemson, and Clemson now 3 games under 500. Clemson's not getting in. Virginia beats Virginia Tech 3-2, and then Pitt beats North Carolina. Pitt is in the pool of 20. But there's no way they host. I think last time I looked, their RPI was in the 50s. Big 12, the only game today, kind of a play-in game between West Virginia and Kansas. West Virginia wins 8-7. 8-7 out there in Oklahoma City. So that's what's happened today. I guess Mid-American, too. Mid-American played Bowling Green, beats Miami of Ohio 9-7. And then Akron takes our friends from Kent State out 9-6. Missouri Valley, Illinois State beats Evansville 10-9. Valpo, who was the best team on Notre Dame's non-conference schedule. Notre Dame played 4 non-conference games, 1 against Central Michigan and 3 against Valpo. And last time I looked, Valpo was like 14-33. Well, they won a tournament game today over Missouri State 6-4. Absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. All right, so Sun Belt Conference, you guys are familiar with those guys. Coastal Carolina, our friends that won our national championship back in 2016. They're 15-1 winners over Arkansas Little Rock. Arkansas State, 9-6 winners over Troy. Good for you, Tommy Raffo. Georgia State, 9-6 winners over UO Monroe. And go ahead and run the jokes right here because everybody was talking about how UO Monroe was so dangerous when they beat TCU. And App State, a 1-0 winner over Texas State. Now, a lot of those scores just kind of around the league, but listen, we're in one of the funnest times of the year right now where everything kind of matters for us. Everything. Every one of these games matters. Like Tulane winning today, probably helpful with our RPI. Kent State losing today, not helpful with our RPI. And speaking of that, let's take a look here at Warren Nolan's RPI and kind of see where things stand for us as we get ready to play our first game of the SEC tournament. Not a lot of surprises. And my colleague Dave Murray keeps up with this on a daily basis. I mean, he stays up, and Dave's an old guy, man. I love Dave to death, but Dave's been doing this forever and a day. He stays up for you guys because he wants to make sure that you guys have the latest information. As soon as he gets up in the morning, he's already kind of getting that article ready and then updating throughout the day. So Mississippi State actually loses a spot in the RPI, according to Warren Nolan today. So it's run down. Arkansas still at 1, Fairfield at 2, which they're completely out of it. So it's like one of those things, you hear Mississippi State, go ahead and kind of take one number off the roll there. Texas at number 3, Vanderbilt at 4. Arizona leapfrogs State and goes to number 5. State at 6 in the RPI. TCU 7, Texas Tech 8, Tennessee 9, Notre Dame 10. And then let's look at a few other things. Ole Miss up 2 to 13 in the RPI. East Carolina down 3 in the RPI after their loss today. South Carolina had been in a great spot. They're now 16 and falling because they have no way to add. Florida now 20 in the RPI. That's the thing, too. You look at Florida, too, with Mississippi State, Tennessee, 2 top 10 RPIs in front of them. Florida could really legitimize themselves. I don't see them playing their way into a top 8, but I think they're certainly a team that could play their way into a guaranteed hosting spot and move up maybe 12, 13 in the seeding. South Carolina being eliminated is big for Florida because on paper, South Carolina was ahead in every measurement except for Florida was 1 game ahead in the SEC standings. But, of course, South Carolina had swept Florida. But you know what? Florida still lives to fight another day. South Carolina kind of sits around and waits. So that's kind of where we stand around the league here and around the RPI. There's LSU, another one, -3 in the RPI, down to 24. And you would like to think, a team with 24 RPI can make it, but a 13 and 17 team in the SEC, it's going to be tough, man. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible, but it's going to be difficult because now LSU can do nothing to help their resume. Alabama's RPI down to 35, despite the fact that I guess that's the tumble from the weekend with us. But we just gotta win and then let people win around us to kind of help us boost the RPI. We need some teams that we beat to help us. But at the end of the day, the hay is essentially in the barn, and Mississippi State controls its own destiny. Simple as that. I'm not as worried about this top 8 national seed as many other people are. But I think if we go over here and we get beat and get embarrassed, it could leave perhaps a bitter impression on the committee. I think it's important to kind of understand that winning the game against Florida and then maybe losing to Tennessee even twice, there's not going to be any real shame in losing to their top 10 RPI. Does that mean we drop out of the top 10? Probably so. That's why I think maybe winning a couple games is better for us. But we just need to find a way to kind of hang in there, around the top 10. I don't think we have to be in the top 10. I think we just need to be near the top 10, and we're going to be fine. But I hate feeling this way. It's like I hate at this point you would think, you know what, we've won 40 ball games and 20 in the SEC, and we've got a top 5, top 6 RPI. Why are we sweating this thing out? And it's incredible how the perception of our team changed after that Missouri weekend. I think our people say, well, you know what? It wasn't that's just baseball weekend. These guys aren't any good. And I can go around and give you, with the exception of everybody but Arkansas, I can give you a weekend that every team in the conference has had a weekend where you're like, these guys aren't very good. After Ole Miss beat Vanderbilt, 2 out of 3, did you not think, you know what, Vanderbilt's not as good as I thought, and that Ole Miss is probably better than I expect them to be this time of year, especially with all the injuries? I think that's probably the prevailing school of thought. Then Ole Miss goes and takes 2 out of 3 from Georgia, and you're thinking, Georgia's not as good as I thought. Right? It's like, it's incredible how everybody has that weekend, but for some reason, maybe it's because we're so acutely aware of it and we're so emotionally invested in Mississippi State's success, it seems like other people just don't get the same level of criticism that we do. Texas, takes 2 out of 3 from TCU, nobody blinks an eye. The next weekend, they lose 2 out of 3 to UL Monroe, and it seems like we're the only ones that care about it. Then they lose another series. This past weekend, lost 3 series in a row, but yet people are saying, hey, they're still hanging in there for a shot at the top 8. I'm like, what? We have one bad weekend? One bad weekend? We've lost 3 series this year. One to the number 1 team in the country. Another one on the road at the defending national champions, best 2 out of 3, and we probably gave a game away. And then we had a bad weekend against Mizzou. But it's incredible to think we have 3 series lost the whole year. TCU's had 3 in a row, but yet people are saying, I think they may be okay. I'm like, what? How could that be? By your own logic, TCU shouldn't be in consideration. But they are. And it's because of their strength of schedule, and it's because of the fact that they finished 3 games ahead of Texas Tech in the Big 12 standings. And to be honest with you, I don't think the Big 12 is very good. And the fact that there's been a lot of weekends in the Big 12, kind of like a Missouri-Mississippi State weekend, right? I mean, you have Kansas State beat a couple of with 2 of the top 3 teams in the Big 12. That much parity in the league says it's not a great league. You look at this Mississippi State SEC West group. Well, let's just kind of be honest here. beginning of the year, people were expecting Ole Miss to win the league, which I never went along with that. And that's not just because of the fact that I don't like Ole Miss. But people had Ole Miss pick 1 in the West, State 2, Arkansas 3. And I said then people were sleeping on Arkansas. But if you look at where it is at the end of the year, Arkansas is 1, State's 2, Ole Miss is 3. And so we got the 3 right. You know, the order was off a little bit. Do you really think that those Big 12 teams could come in here and run this gauntlet? And let me remind you, the very first weekend of the year, Texas Tech, TCU, and Texas combined for a 1-8 record against those same 3 teams. And it seems like we're the only ones that remember that. It's like, well, yeah, that was ancient history. Oh, well, was it? But you use that justification to say, well, the reason TCU's ranked ahead of Mississippi State is because they beat them. Okay, well, why was that not ancient history? You know, and so there's a lot of this that doesn't make sense to me. But here's the deal. We're about to play a tournament between 64 teams, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter how anybody votes. It doesn't matter what anybody projects. What happens in a tournament is there's a scoreboard, and the team that scores the most runs is rewarded with a victory, and then they advance. No matter how many people hate them, no matter how many people don't like them, no matter how many people don't believe in them, no matter how many people pick them to lose, it doesn't matter. What other people say simply doesn't matter. That's the best thing about this. You know, at Mississippi State, we typically do better in situations where there's a scoreboard involved. We're never going to win a matter of opinion. But you put a scoreboard up there, good chance we're going to beat your tail, in baseball especially. And so those are the things that I begin to think about. And we get all bent out of shape, and I've said many times, you know, listen, we talk about rankings because it gives us something to talk about. But the only rankings that matter are the last ones. And nobody votes on that. The team that wins the tournament is the number 1 team in the country. And that's our goal. Our goal isn't just to get to Omaha. Our goal isn't just to win a couple of games at Omaha. Our goal isn't to just win the bracket at Omaha. Our goal is to get to Omaha and win the whole thing. Now, I'm not one of these kind of people who believe it's national championship or bust. I can look back in hindsight and say, you know what, we had a great year. It may take me 6 months, but I can look back and say, you know what, that was a really good team. But every year, you and I get up and, you know, we start looking at the schedule in February and saying, hey, the schedule looks great, and man, we got to be on the road for this SEC weekend, and we're home for this one. This is probably a toss-up here. And so we start picking it out and say, you know what, yeah, we got a good chance to host, right? Because that's what we want to do. That's part of our goal to get there. But the bigger thing is we all think, is this the year? Is this the year? Is it finally the year? Because we know how much we deserve it. And as John Cohen told me in an interview earlier this year, he said, to be honest with you, sometimes I want it more for our fans than I do for myself or our coaches and our players because of how much our fans put into it. You know, I've been invited to a little fish fry out in the RV lots that I'm going to tomorrow night down in Hoover. It's a big caravan of Bulldogs that have come over to celebrate, enjoy the SEC tournament. They're going to fry some fish. They're going to have a good time. We're all going to congregate together, and I'm going to go to that. And the thing that I think about is how many of those people at the beginning of the year said, you know what, we're all going to go to Hoover, and we're going to celebrate Mississippi State, and maybe this is our year. Maybe this is the year that I've been looking for, I've been waiting for. And so I can't sit here and promise you that this is our year. But I can tell you this. They better not let us get to Omaha. Because we've got a veteran group that has been, as does Arkansas, in some respects, as does Vandy, right? And so we've got some SEC teams that are going in there, and kind of depending on how the brackets fall out, we could have an all-SEC final. But I think when you begin to break this thing down, you look at Vanderbilt, you know, their pitching's been up and down as of late. You know, I think if you're going to beat them, I think you want to beat them in the bracket. You know, when they have to kind of extend themselves, you get deeper into the bracket, and all of a sudden they're having to throw a fourth and fifth starter. I think Mississippi State gets them. I think if I want to play Arkansas, I'd want to play them in the championship. Maybe I'm crazy, but it's how I feel. And you know what? As much as some of you guys don't like Arkansas, I've got a lot of respect for Arkansas. I do. And you know what? They had never won one either. I don't want them to win one before we do. But there's a part of me, I think to myself, there's a little piece of me that says, you know what? If we can't win it, I would rather them win it than say Vanderbilt or Texas or really anybody else. And if we can't win it, I kind of want them to. I know some people say, well, I hate those guys. The fans are so obnoxious on Twitter. We'll never live it down. I get it. But I think new champions are good for the sport of baseball. It's just how I feel. I don't want them to win over us. I would love to be able to go to the National Championship Series and beat Arkansas in 2 games, and then we'll be able to gloat and have a good time on Twitter and that sort of stuff. And also, too, we'll have beaten a great team. And how cool would it be if we go beat the number 1 team in the country for the national championship? You talk about, there's some years out there that people say, this team fluked in there. This shouldn't really count. College baseball was down that year. But how rewarding would that be? What a great story that would be, that Arkansas came to Starkville and swept us, and then we ultimately beat them for a national championship in Omaha. It'd be one of the greatest stories of all time. And so I look at all this as opportunity. There's nobody out there that I think our team is dodging. I don't think anybody is scared. And, of course, our immediate concern is the University of Florida. But it's impossible to not think about what could be. And us as fans, we can get as excited about this as we want to. We can get ahead of the game. We don't have to bear down and focus. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning here, and I got to get up in 6 hours. But I don't have to get a good night's rest because I'm not pitching tomorrow. I'm not going to be in the batter's box. I didn't need to go take any, take Benadryl at 10 o'clock to make myself go to sleep. I can stay up all night. It's not going to affect the outcome of the game. But I think when we begin to think about next weekend, we think, we should get a favorable draw. And listen, and I guarantee you this, because I can hear Mr. Self-Loathing Mississippi State fan right now. There will be some Power 5 team that comes in as a 2 that's had a pretty mediocre year. And they're going to say, the NCAA is always trying to screw us. Guys, we're not going to get the Louisiana School of Math and Science and Wesley College and Bug Tussle Tech in our regional. That's not how it's going to work. Nobody that makes a regional is lucky, except maybe Southern this year because they beat Jackson State, but they earned it, right? But you understand my point. It's like we're always looking for, we always get this extra hurdle. No. We're not an average baseball program. We're not an average team. We're an elite program. We're an elite team. And I get tired of having an argument with people. It's like, elite teams don't do this. Listen, you can find whatever you want to make yourself miserable. I just know this. I know we won 20 games in the SEC. I guess it's happened 4 times in our history. 4. Chris Simonis has done it twice. So if we're consistently going to be a team that's competing for the SEC West championship, more times than not we're going to be competing for the SEC championship, which means we're just about always going to be hosting a regional with those numbers, and potentially it'll be a top 8 national seed. The odds of us getting to Omaha and winning it continue to get better. Let's talk a little recruiting before we get out the door. Brought to you by my friend Brooks Bryan at Portico. And listen, Brooks Bryan's my friend, your friend, he's everybody's friend. Brooks is invested in Starkville. He's invested in Mississippi State. He wants to bring value to Mississippi State. He wants to bring you home to Starkville. So Brooks is one of the developers of this great new residential complex. It's a great residential development right near campus, just over a mile from campus. It's called Portico. You turn off of 82 like you're going to campus on 12. It's the very first right. That's how close it is. You cross over Old West Point Road and there's Portico. Got the walking trail, houses to fit any size family, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 4-bath. You need information. And listen, we want you to come be our neighbors. We do. We want you to come home. Brooks will have all your information. There's only a couple houses left in Phase 1, and the next thing you know, they're going to start Phase 2. And it's only going to be like 51 houses in that development. It's not going to be one of these things where it's all these cookie-cutter houses all piled on top of each other. But it's going to be a great community. You need to get more information. You've been putting it off. Stop doing that. And listen, if you've been thinking about it, just wet the whistle a little bit and just call and get some info. And maybe that puts you over the edge. Just get some information. Call today. Brooks Bryan, former Diamond Dog Brooks Bryan, looks like he could still play. 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Okay, so a lot of people say, Steve, listen, now that we've got Trent Singleton in the boat, what's next? And we talked about that a little bit earlier in the week. I have talked to a lot of people kind of confirming some of these camp decisions. Peyton McKinnon, offensive lineman from Mississippi Gulf Coast, will be here on June 4th. The Big Dog Camp or Top Dog Camp, whatever you want to call it. I'm more, to be honest with you, I'm more partial to Big Dog Camp because I thought it was better when we called it Big Dog Camp when Dan was running it. All due respect to Joe, but Big Dog Camp was at night. It was similar to Friday Night Lights. We'd take the guys over to Davis Wade Stadium, turn the music on, let them play a little football. It was a lot of fun. Have Dak and other players out there roaming around in their jerseys, interacting with players, having a good time. We did the Top Dog Camp under Joe. It was in the heart of the day, and had kids over there throwing up. And, yeah, it was in the stadium, but they wouldn't let us get video and be close enough to the kids. It was, it was a shell of what Big Dog Camp was. Big Dog Camp used to be this great event that we couldn't wait to go to. Top Dog Camp was not nearly as good. Wasn't even close to being good. And to be honest with you, I don't think it sold Mississippi State the way Big Dog Camp. Big Dog Camp was a celebration. Top Dog Camp just kind of seemed, just like a practice. It didn't seem like a party type deal. I don't mean you got a party. What I mean is I think the kids enjoyed being on Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field and hearing the music playing and catching a pass. And it was ultra competitive, and it was a different environment for Top Dog Camp under Joe. And I'm not throwing any shots at Joe. I just didn't like the way we did it. Now I'm told this camp is going to be at night. This camp is going to be more like we did in the Big Dog Camp, and so you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to continue to call it Big Dog Camp because I think that's better mojo for us. Top Dog Camp just kind of takes me back to some times that we signed some kids couldn't make it, and so there's going to be a bunch of kids here. So Xavier Harris is supposed to be here. I don't know if he's going to work out, but he's supposed to be here. Grayson Morgan, offensive lineman, is supposed to be here. Just about, I think all the commitments are going to be here. I don't know if Sawyer is going to be here yet, even though he's a signee. Yeah, he'll be here. They'll be ready to report. And he might just be playing baseball. Let me double check that. But newcomers are set to report any day now. I think it's actually May 27th. I think everybody will be here this week. Or maybe it's this weekend. But newcomers will start trickling in. But there's going to be a lot of defensive line guys here as well. Demonte Russell's a guy that could be here. I'm not ready to say we're on commitment watch with him, but it would not surprise me. I don't know that he would commit at Big Dog Camp, but I wouldn't totally rule out that possibility. I do think it's a matter of time before he is a Bulldog, and I think Big Dog Camp's probably as good a time as any to do it. I just don't know if he's been convinced that's the right thing to do. So we'll see. I know that he wants to be a Bulldog, and I think it's just a matter of time before he announces. I think it'd be good to get it done during Big Dog Camp to kind of get your name in the paper. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a big part of things, too, when you have these camps. And we always get excited. Sometimes Dan would even hold some commitments and have them all announced at Big Dog Camp so we could get, the big splash. Now, a couple of things I think you guys need to be mindful of, too. I'm going to share this with you. I hadn't had a chance to share it over on Gene's page yet because it's a travel day for me, and then I had to do some work to kind of prepare for the ball game tomorrow. Dakota Jordan, previously of Canton Academy, is on the move to Jackson Academy. Now, I'm told one of the reasons why is he wants to play in a higher level of competition in both football and baseball. He'll certainly get that opportunity at Jackson Academy. Also told that he is likely not going to be the MLB draft risk that maybe we thought 6 months ago. That there is a possibility that he would be drafted, but at this point, probably not enough, and that's going to be a year from now for him, that would cause him to bypass college. Mississippi State, of course, is kind of committed to him as the only running back in the class. I've been told in recent days that Ole Miss has actually been trying to flip him for 2 months, and they've been unsuccessful. Now, you and I both know they're not going to give up in the month of March, the month of April, the month of May, October, November, December. They're going to continue to work that. And so that's something to watch. Now Dakota himself has said, listen, I'm good, I'm not going. But, you and I both know Mississippi State's going to have to work hard. And you say, well, Steve, it always happens and we lose them. That's not true. It's not true at all. Remember Emmanuel Forbes, All-American freshman cornerback from Grenada, an Ole Miss town? And anytime I say that, the State fans up there say, no, it's not. Yes, it is. They were relentless in their efforts to try to get him to prolong his decision and not sign with Mississippi State in December and give Lane Kiffin a chance to recruit him and maybe wait till February. And he said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm signing with Mississippi State. And so Dakota could take that same route. You may recall Nathan Pickering elected not to sign in December and was going to take some visits, and all of a sudden he realized what message that sent, so he shut things down and didn't do anything. But, recruiting, listen, I've had somebody with some, let's just say, some direct knowledge of the former recruiting manual under Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. And one of the things that was listed in their goals every year is they wanted to flip a Mississippi State commitment on signing day. It was in writing. We always talk about, rent-free. If that's not rent-free, I don't know what is. It's in the dadgum recruiting manual. It may not be anymore. Lane Kiffin may not care as much about us, but, we saw last year they wanted to flip McKaylin Pounders. They did, and then didn't have a spot for him, and the poor kid had to go to Memphis. Still not happy about that. Happy the kid still had some more to go, though. And so these are the things that you hear about and you watch all year. And so Dakota obviously is a guy they've identified that probably has some people close to him that probably saying, yeah, we can get him to flip. And that's usually the case with every one of those kids, whether they flip or not. There's always somebody around them. You may recall Demonte Russell. Remember him? Yeah, he's at Mississippi State right now. That was all the talk on the message boards because he had a couple people close to him that really wanted him to go to Ole Miss. And they weren't members of his family. They kind of portrayed themselves as such. They were going to be a mentor, that sort of stuff. And then, at the end, the family and the young man decided, no, we're going to Mississippi State. No, we're not going to take official visit to Ole Miss. I don't know who you talked to or what they promised you, but we're not going. And so don't think every time Ole Miss gets involved and they got people around that we automatically lose the kid. Sometimes we do. It's clearly something that means a lot to them to flip one of our kids. And I guess maybe I should write a story one day on Cordell Giles. Remember him? Oh, you forgot? Yes, so did Ole Miss. Cordell Giles is a guy from Boneyard, Mississippi, committed to Mississippi State. Ole Miss flipped him on signing day. I'm not even sure he was going to have the grades, but they wanted to flip him. They did. He didn't qualify. He goes to Mississippi Gulf Coast, and according to one of their own alums who coached at Mississippi Gulf Coast, said that Ole Miss never called to check on the kid ever again. He'd served his purpose. And so, yeah, it looked good on signing day. But what happened after the fact? And you can say, well, he didn't take care of business. So you didn't call down there and check? You didn't call your own guy, your own former player that's down there coaching? And so there's a lot of this theater that goes on with recruiting. And so I think it's important to understand that. You remember a couple of years ago, Takeon Reed from New Hope, threw the Mississippi State hat? Where is he today? Oh, he ended up going to junior college. Yeah, he did. Where is he today? Ole Miss dropped him. He got in some trouble. They released him from his national letter of intent. But again, he had served his purpose. Because again, the plan was, hey, we want to flip a Mississippi State commitment on signing day because we want to mess with them and kind of galvanize their fan base and show that we still run the show. But then when I go back and look at them, and I say, well, where are all these kids? What did they do? You flipped all these guys. What did you get from it? What did they contribute to the program? You flipped Armani Linton, too. I'm sure he was a great official visit host. He didn't do much as a football player, but you flipped him. And so I can run down that list. And those are the things that I think about. It's like every time we've had somebody get shady, remember Pat Patterson? Remember that was the big story that his mentor told him, the 3-2 game is like, hey, I watched that offense. I just can't go play there. You know what? No high school kid thinks that way. Every high school kid says, you know what? Those guys need receivers. If that had been me on that field, we'd have won that ball game. But all of a sudden, there's these packaged talking points that's fed to these kids. Here's what you go tell them. Just tell them I can't play on that offense. Kids don't think that way. They don't operate that way. But you know what? Pat Patterson looked really good chasing Corey Brumfield down the field in that pick six in that 2009 Egg Bowl. Again, it's like all these things happen. It's like every time there's been somebody that's done something, it's like they flip these guys. And I begin to say, you know what, where are they now? And so it's a cautionary tale for the next group. Go look at the last kids that flipped. Look at the kind of careers they had. Where are they today? How many of them finished college? How many of them got their degree? How many of them played professional football? How many of them played college football? Or how many of them were just simply a roster filler? Things to think about. Remind you guys, too, if you hadn't done so, go order my newest book, Blooms of Oleander, is available for pre-order through Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. It is going to be released on June 7th. I don't carry the inventory. You can, you can order through them. They'll ship it to you. If you want a personalized copy, which I know many of you do, you contact Book Martin Cafe in Starkville, and they'll take your order and your signing instructions, and I'll take care of them when the books come in, and then they'll ship them to you. Also, Lemuria Books is going to be carrying the book, and we'll have a book signing set up with them sooner rather than later. Looking forward to that. But I'm excited about the book, and I think you will be too. And listen, Father's Day is coming up. Let me encourage you too. Dad wants a copy of Alpha Dogs if he doesn't have one already. And if he's got Alpha Dogs, he may need a copy of Stark Villains. And you know what? Some of you may have some people that maybe hadn't had read Flim Flam in your family. They need to be educated. You can get personalized copies of Flim Flam, Stark Villains, and Alpha Dogs at alphadogsthebook.com. Go check it out today. And, perhaps if Dad already has all the books, maybe he wants a Stark Villain t-shirt. We had a really big month last month. They sent me the reports. Thank you guys so much. April was a great month for Stark Villain wear. So go to starkvillains.com. And I was very surprised. And again, I want to give the camp ladies, Ashley and Angel, a shout out for wearing the Stark Villain shirts on television, because I think that's what spawned all these new sales. So thank you guys very much, the lovely camp mother and daughter. Well, guys, I'm going to get out of here and get some rest, and then I'm going to get up early and eat some breakfast, and I'm going to head over to the Hoover Met and hopefully watch Mississippi State win a ball game against Florida. Now, I will do a Facebook Live Wednesday night from the hotel here, and we'll kind of recap the day that was. We won't wait for the nightcap to finish, so be looking for that. And then when we'll see what happens the rest of the weekend. I may be recording Friday's show right here in Hoover. If we don't win, I'll be recording it from home in Starkville. And so, as I told Rowdy Jordan today, and if you want to go read that, I wrote that story before I went to dinner, the conversation with Rowdy Jordan, a free article over on Gene's page. I told him, I packed enough clothes to make it to Sunday. I don't want to bring any clean clothes home with me. I want to have to wear them all. And listen, I think our kids are here ready to play. And so we'll see how things progress. And it won't take us long to figure it out. We'll find out if we're ready to go here in a few hours. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we'll make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
For the ones finding new ways to ensure the job always gets done. For the ones wearing many hats. For the ones who are hands-on, even from far away. And the ones keeping business moving forward. We are Grainger, offering supplies and solutions for every industry, with 24/7 support and experienced staff at over 250 local branches. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.